Hello, gorgeous, lovely, fabulous, growth-minded entrepreneurs. Dr. Amanda, the Money Healer, here with the last episode of the Woman Entrepreneur Podcast. But don't worry, I'm not actually going anywhere. I'm going to be right back here in 2 days with the next round of podcasting on the same platform. Same place, same station, so don't worry, I'll still be here for you. Today, I want to talk to you about huge transitions that have been going on in my life, in my business over the last several months, and really over the last years of my journey of building this podcast, learning about podcasting, learning about business growth, learning about myself, learning about my zone of genius, inner power, win-win relationships, money mastery, all the awesome things that you've heard me talk about on this podcast for years. And, today I want to give you 6 key lessons that I've learned along the way over this time of building my business, building the podcast, so that you can get inspired, learn from I don't like to use the word mistakes because I think we always learn from what we do. And I love that I've been able to learn so much through doing things that I wouldn't necessarily ever take back, because when you look back and you go, oh, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't made those quote unquote mistakes. So I don't really believe that mistakes happen. And yet I want you to learn from me in ways that really give you permission to fall down and get up on that spiral growth trajectory. I always talk about spiral growth curve of learning instead of a straight line path. So a lot of people think when they step into business or even creating a podcast or doing whatever it is that you do to promote what you offer the world, it's never this point A to point Z in an upward trajectory where it's just all easy and fun and flowing. Instead, it's an upward spiral growth trajectory where there are downs and there are ups and there are sideways confusions and there are spots of shiny object syndrome. There are spots of falling down and wanting to give up. There are times where you're riding high, feeling in flow, feeling awesome, and things are going great. And you're like, oh yeah, I want this all the time. And as you know, if you go back to episode 3 of the Woman Entrepreneur Podcast, I talk about the business scaling journey and to get to your zone of manifestation. So there's 4 stages of business growth, and zone 4 is your zone of manifestation. Yes, this is where we all want to get to, and it doesn't happen overnight. I want to review this podcast alone and the way that I've used it to learn a lot about myself, share with you, attract people to me, be on other people's podcasts, have guests on. I want to give you some stats so you can see the spiral growth journey for me and relate it to your own business. I want to give you hope and inspiration that when you stay in the game long enough and you keep allowing yourself to pivot and you keep allowing yourself to try new things, experiment, let go, surrender, evolve, stay committed for the long term, your success is inevitable. Remember, your success is inevitable when you give yourself permission to explore, to fail, to make mistakes, to get up, to dive into your imposter syndrome, to lean into knowing yourself better, to know that it's possible to have everything you want on the other side of cultivating commitment and habits that lead to your long-term success. The only way that you will ever fail in building your business is if you give up and stop doing it entirely. And even sometimes then when you give up, it's because you've made a decision that's aligned for you. And I don't want you to give up if you're just in this space of maybe despair, maybe hopelessness, maybe powerlessness, maybe feeling like, is this worth it? Maybe you're moving along in your business okay, and it just isn't quite what you want it to be. Stay in the game. I promise that if you stay in the game and you learn how to tap into your inner power, learn how to self-coach and dive into your intuition, all the things that I teach you here and that I will continue to teach you, I promise you that it gets better. And on that spiral growth curve, you start to expand into your fullest potential. And then instead of feeling like there's a shitstorm coming at you in those down times and you feel like you're out of control of your reality, you start to feel like you have a magic wand to choose your challenges. So if you visualize a spiral curve, curve, when you're on that downward part of the spiral, you get to choose your growth edges instead of feeling like the universe is throwing them at you in a way that's uncontrollable. And that's really everything I teach here. It's that you get to be the conscious, deliberate creator of your reality by tapping into your inner power, getting aligned in your zone of genius, doing things that you enjoy, delegating away stuff that you don't, narrowing your focus so that you can then design a life and business you love. So let's talk about that a little bit. So first, I want to share some stats with you about the podcast, because I'm right now at the time of this release, we're a little bit past, we're about 4 years and 3 months into this podcast. If you've been on the journey with me since, let's say you've been on the journey with me since day one, I would love for you to take a screenshot and share it and tag me, or even just DM me and share with me anything that you've gotten from the podcast. And right now we're in this huge transition, which you're going to hear about. You would want to go to @InnerPowerDaily, @InnerPowerDaily on Instagram, and you'll find me there and we'll connect. I would love to hear from you. I know I have people who have listened to me since day one. We are 289 episodes into this podcast. It's been rebranded 3 times and we're on the 4th, which is what we're going to talk about today. And so I want you to think about that. If I had just given up at episode 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, where would I be? I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't be where I'm at in my business, which is having multiple 6-figure years. I wouldn't be having impacted so many people in the world. So the numbers for the podcast today are that we are in the top 2% globally rated on Listen Notes, which is a huge accomplishment. We have over 90,000 downloads and rapidly growing. So I know that's going to accelerate and it will get to 1 million, which is something I aspire to. And we are listened to in over 55 countries. This is amazing if you think about this. When I started this podcast, it was called Max Potential Habits, and it was on March 2019. And you can go back and scroll through this podcast. I would encourage you to go back and listen to episode number 1 and of Max Potential Habits. It was on March 2019, and you can hear my inspiration, my vision, my clarity, my desire. Yeah, I wasn't super experienced at podcasting, but I cared so much. And I want to encourage you to know, just get started, because I started that podcast in my tiny little basement. I mean, I have pictures of it. This is just audio based right now, so I don't have a picture up, but it was this unfinished basement with just dark and kind of dingy and crappy. I had purchased on eBay. I was on eBay. Actually, it was on Amazon. This white brick kind of satiny sheet that looked like white brick. I hung it up with safety pins or push pins. And I had this little desk that I would sit, and I got a Yeti on Amazon, and I would just sit and talk into it. And actually the first episodes I recorded were on my phone with just a regular headphones plugged into my phone. And I would record and I would share. And then I started doing a YouTube mixed with podcast releases. And so I would do it down there. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I cared, and I knew I wanted to get the word out there, because podcasts were such a large part of my journey of going from food stamps to 6 figures. When I was on the floor crying and really feeling stuck and scared, I said to myself, I'm ready to do anything. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to stop my broken relationships, have healthy relationships, and change my money reality. And it led me to listening to podcasts. And I love podcasts because you can learn on the go. It's free. You can choose from such a wide variety of topics. And I was so inspired by the people that I was listening to. And I was changing from listening to free podcasts. And it caused me to believe in myself. And I thought, I want to have my own podcast. And so I got onto YouTube University, and I watched all these videos, and I learned audio. I am right now recording on an app a software called Audacity. and it's free. And so I spent, a couple hours watching videos about how to use Audacity. And then I learned about show notes. And realistically, it was probably 8 hours of learning on YouTube and just watching videos. And then I launched a podcast. And so I don't want you to overthink things. I don't want you to get stuck in perfectionism. One of my main mantras then was screw perfection, just get started. And I put stuff out there that isn't polished. I still put stuff out there that isn't polished. I just go for it because I know that when I keep consistently releasing content, I keep sharing value with you, it impacts people and it's good for me. This is a win-win exchange, right? I love doing this. I love being here for you. And I love that you respond by listening and sharing this with other people and reaching out to me. The majority of my clients and the money that I've made has come from being a podcaster. And I'm not saying this to encourage people who are listening who don't have a podcast that you have to have a podcast. You want to do what's aligned with you. For me, it was just one of those inspired paths because it had impacted me so much. Maybe you'd rather write a blog, or maybe you would rather do YouTube. Maybe you want a newsletter release every week. You definitely want something that is going to share information and value with your people, but do whatever is aligned with your zone of genius. And for me, podcasting has really been that. And it's been a journey. So let's go back. Max Potential Habits, I released 171 episodes. It was running for 2 years, and I would release 2 episodes a week, and 85 of those were interviews. I got to interview the coolest people, such inspirational stories, some really big players in the world, some people who are not known, just everyday people who are running businesses. And it was such a learning journey, and I enjoyed it so much. Of course, you can go back and listen to any of those. And then I started Max Potential Money. The reason I did this is because I got this idea that what my audience wanted was one result, which was to make more money in their businesses. And because I had gone from food stamps to 6 figures, I decided, okay, it makes sense to label this Max Potential Money. So I shifted the name of the podcast and I ran this for 45 episodes. And it was about 10 months. And I started to grow disinspired. And part of this was because I was engaging with people less in my community. I started to outsource a lot of my stuff, and I was engaging with people less, and I started to lose my inspiration for it. At the same time, I also started learning a lot about YouTube, and I thought, I want to have a YouTube channel. So I took a whole bunch of YouTube classes and online courses and thought, I'm going to switch this to YouTube based. And so I took 10 months off the podcast, actually thinking that I was going to completely end the podcast. I made an announcement that said last episode of NFA Money. I didn't take it off the platform, right? So people could still listen to it. And there was still some listenership, but not a ton. And I switched to a YouTube strategy, and I started doing YouTube videos that were called NFA Money Talks. And I did 50 interviews, and these were talking with entrepreneurs who were successful, helping pre-6-figure entrepreneurs along the way. You can go watch those on YouTube. If you're listening to this right now, you would go to my YouTube channel, which is Inner Power Daily. So just go to YouTube and search Inner Power Daily and go to the playlist, type in NFA Money Talks, and you'll find it. And there's amazing interviews on there. And then I started to get antsy again. And I felt like, okay, I forgot how much I love podcasting, and I'm not as much enjoying this video thing. And so I decided I'm going to go back to podcasting. Here I am, same avatar, same audience, same love of teaching. And I decided, I'm going to go back to my podcast and reawaken it. And I decided to call it the Woman Entrepreneur Podcast. Now, this was an interesting pivot in my business because I had been working pretty much, I'd say 75% for a lot of my business with men. And I would say high ticket, one-on-one clients, men, some masterminds. And I had a few courses that I launched that would make, 20 to 30K per launch. Those worked. But I didn't have a lot of women clients. And I got this idea in my head that I needed to niche down. And it was actually, I had a consultant that told me that this was a really good way to go. And, I said, of course, I would love to empower women on their journey of entrepreneurship. And so I decided to go for it, which meant that NFA Money, that used to be broadly reaching more people, men and women, it started to niche down to women. And so this was started in August of 2022, so not even a year ago. And I have released 73 episodes to date. I did biz breakdown sessions with 26 really awesome women. As you've seen, I released several BBS or biz breakdown sessions over the last several weeks because I wanted to make sure those all got out before this new launch of what's next. I wanted to make sure they were honored and highlighted on the podcast. And those episodes are awesome. It's women coming on and sharing their growth journey, their business scaling journey, giving you advice, giving you tips, being willing to get tips and feedback from me live time. Like, what a cool thing. And then I did some women entrepreneur podcast parties because I thought, I got to reach more people. The biz breakdown sessions were a little bit limiting because it wasn't as many people at once. And so I did all of these things. And then here we come to, the time of taxes. And I had gotten out of my regular habit of looking at my money in my business, which is wild because being a money mindset and manifestation coach, that is not a smart move. And I did it anyway. I definitely had a year last year of being all over the place in the way that I was feeling and thinking about business. And I couldn't quite identify what it was. I had lots of places of inspiration and a lot of feelings of joy and alignment, and also a lot of feelings of confusion and doubt and insecurity and shiny object syndrome in some ways. And I started to notice that I wasn't enjoying my business as much. And when I did my P&L looked at the end of the year reports, I really realized that my revenue had decreased a lot. And when I looked at my biggest money makers, it was with men, and it was with high paying men clients, right? Like doing one-on-one coaching. And I was like, interesting. So between that and my affiliate sales, I had made the most money in my business. And I thought, that's crazy. I've spent the entire last 10 months focusing on women entrepreneurs, and it's been my lowest income ever in my business. And so I really had to sit with this and evaluate and assess and mourn in some ways. I felt really attached to women entrepreneurs, and I felt very attached to the Women Entrepreneur podcast. And I had revamped a lot of my business, like everything really. If you went to my website at that point in time, you would see that it's all geared toward women. It said women entrepreneurs, and the podcast was for women, and all my programs were for women. And I was having a very hard time selling, and which isn't typical for me. I'm very magnetic with sales. I teach people how to sell well. And so it was somewhat confusing, and it's taken me several months. So of course I did my taxes, it was in April, looking at everything with my bookkeeper. Actually, it was in March, and I'm an S Corp. So you do your taxes by March 15th as an S Corp. And so this was in early March, and I realized, okay, I've got to make some pivots because I'm not getting the magnetic money-making attraction that I used to have when I was working with both men and women. And so I sat with this, and I really resisted it in big ways because I had created so much momentum. And I know all of you probably, or if you haven't heard of sunk cost fallacy, it's this concept of when you put a lot of energy, time, and money into something, you're afraid to let it go because now you have sunk cost. And I really felt that way. I was like, oh my God, am I really going to pivot? Another thing I feared was that you would all judge me. It's like that feeling of, oh my God, am I scattered? I teach about not having scattered brand identity, but here I am considering pivoting again. And so all those doubts and fears came up. And yet I knew as a money coach and looking at my money, I needed to do something different. And at the same time that this was going on, my husband had left his C-suite job, high-paying job, to come work with NFA Money full-time. And when he came on board, we really started shaking things up and adding programs and adding things that we thought that we could do some high-end, like high-ticket coaching or, speaking, high-ticket coaching with corporate world and franchisee because he came from the franchise world. And so we created a whole nother business and started to play with that and did some workshops. And I all this time I was feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, stuck, and unclear. And it was interesting because I love what I do. I love, like right now, sitting here sharing this information with you is my jam. Like, it is aligned for me to share my growth journey with you. It is aligned for me to teach you through sharing my growth. It's aligned for me to come up with strategies for you to understand how to grow. And really, and the way I'm conceptualizing now is this inner power piece, because I really realized for myself when I went back and looked at everything I love doing, it has to do with my own transformation of going from feeling powerless to feeling powerful. And, this incorporates everything I talk about here: overcoming fear, overcoming imposter syndrome, overcoming self-doubt, becoming confident, knowing, loving, and trusting yourself, learning manifestation and how energy works, learning how to tap into your zone of genius and your inner power in order to manifest through your energy and manifest through alignment. That is what I'm best at. When I work with people in the world, what they commonly say to me is that they feel better on every level. And, because I had framed my business around money, people would come to me to make more money. That would be how they were attracted to me, because they would think that's what they needed. Really, what they needed was a complete overhaul of their power. They felt powerless. They didn't know who they were. They didn't know what they wanted, and they didn't know how to get there. And so now I'm really clear and aligned with teaching you to know who you are, know what you want, and know how to get there. And it's that simple. And I think that sometimes in business we're told by so many other people what we're supposed to be doing that we lose sight of what we love doing. And even for someone like me who teaches this to other people, who coaches and consults and reads about this stuff all day, every day, sometimes I get stuck in the weeds and I can't see clearly. And even though I've spent $110,000 around there on coaches and consultants, on courses in the last 4 years, 4.5 years. Yeah, 4.5 years we're talking. I've been in business now. In 4.5 years, I've spent $110,000 on coaches, consultants, and online courses, some of which have been incredibly helpful, and some of which I learned the hard lesson of paying people to soothe my imposter syndrome. I'm going to say that again because I know it's true for some of you listening. Have you ever paid for a coach or consultant to soothe your imposter syndrome, thinking they have the answer and you don't? And, I made one of my biggest purchases. I made this happen. It was like a $55,000 coach. And I got, I don't want to demean her in any way. So I'll say this: she's awesome at what she does. She's helped many people. She has created many 8-figure businesses. She clearly knows what she's doing in business world. And it wasn't the right kind of coaching for me, because she had a system and a plan to tell me what to do. And I'm not someone who's good at being told what to do like that. My genius is in coming up with ideas and putting and innovating and creating and putting that stuff out into the world along the lines of what I love to teach. And so having someone tell me what to do in their system is the worst thing for me. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but I got sold like, I kept thinking my goal was I got to get to a 7-figure business. And so she told me she could help me do that. And so I paid a lot of money, and I learned so much through the process of understanding, I can self-coach and hire. For me, what it's turned into is hiring the right people at the right time for shorter stints. So an example of this would be hiring a podcast coach. I hired a podcast coach who consulted me for 8 weeks, and it was freaking awesome. And that was it. That's all I needed. I needed his expertise for 8 weeks, and he just rocked my world, and it was awesome. And it was a very low, it was low. It wasn't $55,000, right? So it was only a couple $1,000s. I got really good care. I got the exact steps I needed. And it was because it was that focus thing that I was ready for. So the reason I share this with you is because I want you to slow down and check in with yourself about your intention behind paying for coaches, courses, and consultants. Obviously, I'm a coach, so I'm going to advocate for you to hire coaches. I think that coaching can be life-altering. absolutely life altering. I also think that sometimes we get stuck hiring people because we think they have the answer instead of slowing down to see what we already know, to see what resources we already have available to us, to journal and go within and listen to your intuitive answers, right? You want to tap into yourself first and foremost to check in and slow down and stop thinking that everybody outside of you has the answer. And getting help from the right people at the right time is priceless. Paying for someone to soothe your imposter syndrome is costly. And that's really important for you to remember. That's one of the biggest lessons I've had on this journey. So that's the overview of podcasts. So we went from season 1, Max Potential Habits, 171 episodes. Season 2, Max Potential Money, 45 episodes. Then we took it to YouTube for NFA Money Talks for 50 episodes. Took 10 months off of podcasting, missed it, came back with the Women Entrepreneur Podcast, 73 episodes in, and now we're launching a new podcast on this same platform. So don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. You just come right back here. It'll be on the same platform. It's going to be marketed toward men and women, not just women. Same concept. It's you tapping into, if you go back and listen to my episodes, I talk about the 3 pillars of growth, the 3 pillars of leading a fulfilling life and business. And it was personal power, win-win relationships, and money mastery. And that's really the core of what I love to do. And so along those lines of power and personal power, every single thing that you create in your life, whether it feels aligned and good or bad and misaligned, is based on your sense of personal power. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you want? Do you know how to get there? And so the new podcast will be, and it's releasing in 2 days, the Inner Power Entrepreneur Podcast. And I'm so excited for this because my avatar, you, is a growth-minded person who cares about tapping into your potential, who cares about knowing yourself, who cares about really discovering what your zone of genius is, using that in the world to impact people, make money doing it, having aligned relationships, creating win-win situations, caring about what you do, really wanting to expand to your fullest potential. So it's growth-minded entrepreneurs, right? So it's similar avatar, except for now it won't be just women on the Woman Entrepreneur Podcast. It will include men and wrap men back into the fold. So if there are men listening to this right now, welcome back. If my men have dropped off and they're going to come back for You Are Powerful podcast and listen to this episode later, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for coming back to me, because I had a lot of loyal men who I don't think I abandoned them necessarily, but I definitely, in the shift to the Women Entrepreneur Podcast, I wasn't there for them in the same way anymore. And so I'm really looking forward to going back to serving both men and women who are growth-minded entrepreneurs who really care about the things I teach and are on the same growth journey with me. And really in this new iteration of my business, which I'm rebranding NFA Money to Inner Power Daily. So if you go to innerpowerdaily.com, you'll see the beginning stages of this rebrand. And this is a big deal because you all know, I have an NFA tattoo on my body. I have NFA. I live NFA. I breathe NFA. And for those of you who don't know, NFA is no fucking around. This is my being. It's my soul. I am very NFA about what I do. And that's not going away. I am rebranding to a new way of feeling aligned with what I'm putting out in the world. It is no longer completely focused on money making. It's so much bigger than that. And the reason that I think that's important is because money is neutral. Money is not the answer. Money will give you whatever you are thinking it will give you. So when you become wealthy, and when you make a lot of money, it's because you are in a state of being in your aligned energy that attracts money your way. Now, you can do that and still lead a shitty life. If you don't feel good and you're not at peace and you feel stressed and you break through to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures, whatever the amount is for you, you're still going to be stressed because you are being stressed. Your state of being is aligned with stress. So money isn't the solution. It's you are the solution. Your sense of inner power, the way that you are aligned in your being, is what causes your reality to be the way that it is. And so I'm really dropping that focus on just money. in no way demonizing money. I love money. Money loves me. I want everyone to have whatever amount of money they choose to have. It's this pivot toward aligned state of being to access your fullest power. I know that those of you listening, if you've ever been in a disempowered place, which I know a lot of you have because I hear from you all the time, it's a shitty feeling. It's like, oh my God. I think about the times where I've been scared, facing homelessness, feeling so destroyed by relationships, feeling completely disempowered financially, comparing myself negatively to the people around me who were going on trips to Europe while I was at home feeding my kids beans and rice on food stamps. And I was jealous and I was resentful and I was scared and I was angry and I was sad and I felt like shit. And it was the deepest sense of feeling powerless. I felt powerless. And the day I realized that I have power was the day that everything changed for me. And it really started with me stopping blaming other people. When you blame other people, you lose all of your power to change. So if you're blaming other people, you are putting your ability to manifest what you want in other people's hands. And that's not how it works. And so when I say that's not how it works, what I mean by that is if you blame other people, you're going to keep getting whatever reality is reflected back at you by you being a victim and feeling powerless and being stuck in survival mode. I choose to be living in a state of aligned energy, waking up every day, loving what I do, creating from a place of balance, doing a morning routine that gets me set up for success, feeling damn good. I've been writing in my journal lately a scripting process that I'll teach you. And I've taught it here. Actually, if you go back and search scripting, you can find it, or how to script, or just type script into the search bar on the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to, and you'll find it. Scripting is so powerful, and I've been ending it lately with life is fucking good. And that's how I feel. Like, I'm sharing a lot of my ups and downs with you here today. And it's because I want you to know I'm human. I struggle too. And I always get back up with these tools that I teach. It's much faster than it used to be. I used to get suicidally depressed. I would be depressed for months when I was younger. And even in my 30s, I was suicidally depressed. I had periods of life where I wished that I would die. I would wake up in the morning after sleeping a lot of hours, and I would daydream about how can I die in a way that my kids don't know I killed myself. I mean, God, that's like, it's making me cry. Like, fuck, that's rough. And I felt it deep in my soul. It was like, I just want this to end, and I don't want my kids to feel bad. And so I would wish that I could get hit by a car, or I would wish that I could just end the misery. And that is no place to live. And I don't want any of you to ever feel like you need to live like that. And I get it. And sometimes we go through it, and I want you to hang on, and I want you to overcome, and I want you to step back into a place of accessing your inner power, loving yourself more, knowing what you want, knowing tools to get there. The cool thing about these tools that I teach you here is that it is always possible to grow when you start to look within. You've heard me say many times, your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. If you don't like what you're getting on the outside, you've got to change what's within. And what that means is that you got to face your shit. You got to face your demons. You've got to be willing to know yourself, which takes specific strategies that anyone can learn. If I can go from a place of total disempowerment, literally on food stamps, on the floor crying, having left my 15-year marriage, having an affair, next relationship had an affair, cheated on me. Like, wow. I mean, just struggling, suicidal, feeling less than everyone around me. I really felt inferior. I felt powerless. And now here I am today. I'm 4.5 years into business. So this is my 5th year of business. I have a podcast that's globally rated top 2%. I have a business where I've made 100K, except for one year I made 98.5, which was interesting. That was last year, in that year that I had slower growth. So close to 6 figures. And hey, it happens. And I've made, so we'll say 100K, close to 100K every year of my business. I I have interviewed some of the coolest people. I've learned so much. Now I'm married happily to my best friend who is my life partner, my business partner. We have so much fun. Yes, we have our ups and downs too. We learned a lot working together this year. And we are a launching pad for exponential growth together. We're like a home base of love. I own a house that's on 3/4 of an acre. It's beautiful, fabulous. My office is amazing. My kids are thriving. Life is fucking good. And it all happened with me learning how to get aligned in my state of being, change my energy, change my mindset, change my habits, change the way I habitually thought. And then everything in my outer world started to transform. And so that's what I bring to you on every version of the podcast, on every season of the podcast, no matter what it's named. That is the core essence of what I'm here to teach you how to do. Know what you want. Know yourself, know who you are, know what you want, know how to get there. That's the new logo. That's the new, tagline for the new brand of Inner Power Daily. Know who you are, know what you want, know how to get there. And that is what I teach you because I know what it feels like to be disempowered. I know what it feels like to feel really fucking good. And I want that for you too. No matter where you're at on the scale of, let's say, survival to thrival, wherever you're at on that scale, you can just keep on growing. It's possible. I 100% believe in you. So I know I've been sharing stories for a long time. I want to give you just 6 key lessons. I'm going to recap because I really intermingled this throughout the episode today. 6 key lessons. Growth is a spiral curve. Like I said, growth is not a straight line curve. You're going to fall down. You're going to have hard times. You're going to have dark spots. The cool thing about having inner power tools is that you can move through the spiral down point more quickly and you can choose your challenges to grow instead of feeling like there's a shitstorm being thrown at you. So growth is a spiral curve. Remember, anytime you're on the downward, ask yourself, what am I learning to get to the next evolution of myself? The universe is sending me some cool stuff to learn about myself and be on that upward spiral growth trajectory, and know that it's never ending. You can keep expanding and keep growing. Keep hanging out with me and you will keep growing. Keep hanging out with people like me, like yourself, who, if you're here listening to this right now, you are a growth-minded person and your success is inevitable if you just stay on track. Okay, number 2, it's okay to pivot. Give yourself permission to pivot. I want you to say it to yourself right now. I give myself permission to pivot. What that means is that when things start to feel out of alignment to you, there is a reason that you're experiencing that. Don't just do what other people tell you to do because it's what you quote unquote should do. There are lots of ways to build a business, and it's okay to pivot. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to look crazy and foolish and silly. I mean, I don't know. Some of you might be judging me for being on the 4th, going into the 4th rebrand of this podcast. And if you think I'm crazy, that's okay. I'm allowing myself to pivot. I get to live my life this one time in this body, and I'm doing it in the way that feels good to me, right? So if you judge me for it, go away. I don't want your fucking judgment. I want to feel good about myself. I choose to feel good about myself. And I want that for you too. Give yourself permission to pivot. Number 3, pay attention to your P&L. Pay attention to your P&L. When I looked at my P&L and I saw where my revenue was coming from and I saw why my income was going down, I was like, that makes sense. You got to track your money. You got to pay attention to where it's coming from. And I'm really glad I had that period of letting go of that habit for a while. I needed a break from the hypervigilance around it, and it's been really good for me. And when I looked at my P&L, it gave me a lot of insights. So when you want to scale and you choose to scale to the next level, pay attention to your P&L. It gives you a lot of answers. And what I mean by that is look where you're spending money. Where can you cut costs that are not giving you high ROI results, and pay attention to where your money comes from. You want to pay attention to the fastest, easiest paths to cash, doing things that you enjoy. That's going to be where your money becomes very magnetic. So pay attention to your P&L and read between the lines, right? So it's like, okay, I'm making a lot of profit here and I'm enjoying it the most. Do that, right? So pay attention to your P&L. Number 4, follow your intuition and your joy. If something keeps nagging at you and you feel off, you don't have to know the answer right away. It took me 10 months to figure this out this year. 10 months, which was a long time for me. In the course of doing mindset work and really learning manifestation and energy, I tend to pivot a lot more quickly and I tend to get into alignment a lot more quickly. The last 10 months for me has been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of ups and downs, way more than the year before or the year before. I wouldn't say before the years when I really was really stuck. But, I think part of it is when you beat yourself up and don't follow your intuition, it gets harder because you create resistance. And I don't think that's what I was doing. I look back at those 10 months and I sat a lot in a place of surrender. I was very attached to getting to a 7-figure business. I was very attached to the way it would be done. I didn't know this at the time, but I look back now and I'm like, oh, I was really hyper controlling that and not letting the universe bring me the answers. And so what I was doing was following my intuition to slow down and let go and surrender. I didn't always feel joy. It felt scary. A lot of it felt scary. Surrendering is often scary because we're so used to our plan and it feels safe to have a plan. Even if the plan isn't getting where you want to go, it feels safer sometimes than having no plan. And so, when I say follow your intuition and your joy, it's going to require surrender. And when I say require surrender, it's surrendering the attachments you have to that it has to be a particular way. And when I did that, everything changed very rapidly and my magnetism came back. my positive magnetism. You're always magnetizing. So I would say my magnetism for consciously creating what I choose to attract my way returned. When you follow your intuition and joy, remember that's a feedback system. You want to listen to those niggles, those nagging feelings. Your feelings are always your guide to what you're going to attract. So joy is a symptom of you being aligned. Joy is created through alignment. So is frustration, fear, and survival. So is feeling stuck. And so when you get stuck in those places, slow down, listen. It might take a while. It took me 10 months. That's a long time for me. And it might take you years. It might take you 2 days. It might take you 5 minutes. Whatever the amount of time, don't get attached to that. Just keep following your intuition. Keep leaning into joy. Keep doing small things that you enjoy, and your path will get easier. Okay? Number 5. This one's really powerful. Do less busy work to expand your freedom. Do less busy work. I like this concept of doing less to make more money, doing what you enjoy. So you've heard me say many times on this podcast that my mantra is work less, make more, have fun. Now, this is interesting because sometimes it doesn't mean you're actually doing less. You're just working less, which means you're not doing busy work BS that you're told you're supposed to do. I see this so often, especially with entrepreneurs, where they're told they're supposed to do everything, post here, do this, do that, like all the stuff. And they just get burnt out and feel like crap. And they never slow down to think like, is this working? Is this getting my expected results? Am I enjoying this? And drop everything you possibly can that is not bringing you the results that you choose, because that's going to help you get back into alignment with joy. And so this year for me, those 10 months, I really did a lot of that. I've cut. You've seen it on the podcast. I went from having 2 episodes a week to 1 episode a week. And then the last few weeks we've released 2 because we wanted to release everything before this new round of the podcast rebrand. And I've been very strategic about my use of time. So it's doing less busy work can look like delegating. It can look like dropping shit that you don't need to be doing. It can be slowing down your commitments to social stuff. If you're a parent and you have kids, sometimes it's taking extracurricular activities off of the books. It's wild because my kids are all adults now, my 3 biological kids, and then my stepson is younger and he goes back and forth between co-parents. And we spend a lot of downtime relaxing. A lot. Like, he's not in a whole bunch of stuff and he's not quite to that age yet. Next year he'll start doing more sports and things like that. But it's like, I sometimes talk to parents who they have like 5 things going on the weekends with their kids. And I get why people do it. And I also hear them say they're overwhelmed, they're frazzled, their plate is too full. And if they feel that way, how do you think their kids feel? And if that's you, assess whether what you're doing actually makes sense. Is this Is this beneficial? Is it creating joy? Is it creating stress? Like, what the point of do less busy work to expand your freedom means assess how you spend your time and choose things that bring you joy, bring your family joy, bring your business joy. And that's what creates less busy work. Don't do crap just because you were told you were supposed to do it, or just because you think people will judge you negatively if you don't. Drop that. Drop your fears around other people's judgment. Drop your fears about your judgment of thinking you're not enough. You are enough. You sitting in the chair and reading a book is enough. You sitting in the chair and staring at the wall blankly is enough. Give yourself permission to relax. Cut off the crap that's too much. Cut off the busy work. Okay. Number 6, magnetism happens when you're aligned with your inner power. Magnetism happens when you're aligned with your inner power. And so I really want you to start playing with this concept of inner power. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you want? And do you know how to get there? And, my whole new brand is built around you practicing self-coaching in order to get what you want. So it's a journaling, it's daily learning, journaling, meditating, in order to help you draw out from within, understand your unconscious blocks and all the things that are stopping you, get aligned with your inner power, and create a daily habit to reprogram your mind, to reprogram your habits so you can manifest everything you desire. And it's everything. If you go back and listen to all my Max Potential Habits podcast episodes, you will hear that in all of the interviews, I would ask every person, what are the top 3 Max Potential habits that got you where you are today? And the overriding theme was a morning routine that sets you up for success. It almost always included journaling, meditating, and learning. And for some people, they add exercise. I think I like to exercise lately at the end of the day instead of the beginning of the day, but I think the reason it's important to have a solid morning routine is because it aligns your energy for the rest of the day. And when you align your energy for the rest of the day, you don't have to effort and work so hard to attract easier things your way. So your magnetism increases when you get aligned first thing in the day with your inner power. And just think of inner power as your magnetic force when it's aligned with joy, when it's clear, when it's confident, when you've dropped resistance, when you've dropped fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and you feel poised, you feel good, you feel joy, you feel inspired. That is when the money magnetism happens. That's when relationship magnetism happens. That's when all the good things that you want are created. And so Inner Power Daily is about you practicing and cultivating inner power daily. Every single day. It's just like brushing your teeth. You wouldn't brush your teeth for 5 hours one day of the week and then think that that's going to work. Instead, you brush your teeth every day for a little bit of time. Same with the gym. You don't go work out for 5 hours one day a week and think that that's going to cover you for the whole week and that you're going to be healthy and feel good. No, you work out strategically throughout the week on a daily basis. You move your body every day. You take care of your health every day. Your mindset and your inner power is no different. It's a daily habit that you must start implementing if you want to get everything you desire. Okay, this is funny. I was planning on going 20 minutes and here we are 47 minutes in. I have like a page with the 6 key lessons and the podcast stats, and that's it. And the rest of it was just coming from my heart, sharing with you the journey, sharing with you what's coming next. So stick around, same station, same RSS feed. Come right back here in 2 days. The Inner Power Entrepreneur Podcast. And I want you just to remind yourself every day, I am powerful. I choose to be powerful. I choose to do what it takes to be powerful. Anyone, and I'm telling you, anyone can have what they want when they align with these things, these habits, these mindset strategies, these tools, energetic alignment. Get aligned in your state of being, be in a space of joy, do what you love in the world, in your zone of genius, and everything is possible. I really want you to remember that. That's your key takeaway for today. Okay, can't wait to see you at the next episode of the new season of the rebranded podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I wish you were with me in my office right now. I would give you the biggest squeezes and big jumping NFA money high fives. I'll see you next time.